My project is called The Hoteling. It's named after the alleyway that it's on. It's a private social club and boutique hotel behind three distinct facades of three historic buildings in the Jackson Square neighborhood. It targets Silicon Valley techies, and it's a place where investors and people with the next big idea can come together and collaborate. It's an adaptive reuse project, and it'll save two important historical landmarks that are on the verge of collapse, bringing new life to the original social district of San Francisco. So I did a lot of case studies, and you're probably asking yourself, what is a private social club? Its origins date back to 18th century London, and it was originally a place where people with similar interests could come together and hang out and make friends. It later became very elitist and was all about how much money you had, so it kind of fell out of popularity. We saw a big resurgence in the 80s of similar style clubs with different names called the Country Club. Then it morphed into luxury all-inclusive gyms, and then the last few years, private social clubs have become really popular again, and it's gone back to its original roots of connecting people that have similar interests. So as I said, I did a lot of case studies on different models of types of private clubs, but the most important was the Soho House group. And they have thriving clubs that are all around the world right now, and a number in the US, in New York, Miami, and LA, and now Chicago. And they have one part component that's the private club, and another part that's open to the public that's a boutique hotel, so you can experience it on the weekend without being a member. And basically, my club differentiates itself from the Soho House based on the target market. So Soho House targets art and media elite, so Hollywood, which we don't have, but what we do have is Silicon Valley. So right now they have a lot of these events called tech mixers throughout the Bay Area, and it's events where people with the next big idea can pitch their ideas to angel investors and hopefully get funded. So it's a startup culture. And they meet all around in bars, hotels, and conference centers, but they don't have a dedicated space that's just for them. Here's a nifty little chart about how startups are situated around San Francisco. The red dot is where I propose the club will be, and the circles have different numbers in them. It's kind of hard to see this far away, but basically the largest concentration is all in the financial district. And some fun little facts, distribution of startup founders by city in the US, the most are in San Francisco. They're mostly male and they're mostly college educated. And I found some interesting facts that even though there's a ton of tech companies in Silicon Valley, most of the people who work for those companies still choose to live in San Francisco. So that's another reason why actually having the club here rather than Silicon Valley is a good spot. So as I was saying, the users are going to be angel investors, people that want to help fund the next big idea. You're people who already work in the tech industry, 20 to 30 somethings looking to get into that network and get connected, and then a fourth group of luxury travelers that maybe aren't related to the tech industry, but they really want to experience that type of life for a weekend. So my project's located in Jackson Square. It's a historic district that's surrounded by the Financial District, North Beach, and the Embarcadero. It has 2- and 3-story Italianate brick buildings, and it's very centrally located. It's really quaint, and it's currently without any hotel accommodations. Here you can see a site map of where the buildings are actually located. They're bordered by Jackson Street, Montgomery, Washington, and Hoteling Place. And it's anchored by the Transamerica building at the end with Transamerica's Redwood Forest, which is an interesting little area. With the redevelopment of the Northeast Embarcadero for America's Cup, the whole area has been really revitalized, and it's centrally located to a lot of major attractions at the Embarcadero and North Beach, and conveniently located near public transportation. The decision to put the entrance on an alleyway served a couple purposes. One, it maintains the speakeasy vibe that I'm going for. And then it also conveniently limits traffic backup on Montgomery Street. And it also protects people getting out of their cars from the elements based on wind patterns in San Francisco. So it's 3 buildings that are put together. The first 2 are actually already adjoined, and collectively they're called the Belli Building. They are 2 historic buildings that were built in the mid-1800s. It's 3 levels plus a basement and a roof. And they've had a really interesting history. One of them was the first building for the Freemasons in California. The other was the Melodeon Theater. And then once they were adjoined in the 50s, they served as law offices for a really famous lawyer called Melvin Belli, hence the name. Unfortunately, they were really severely damaged in the 1989 earthquake. And because of inheritance disputes and foreclosures and the owner's death, the buildings are basically on the verge of collapse. When I started this project, they were just a front and rear facade, and the whole interior was gone. And then since then, an architect has been working on it to turn it into mixed use for office on the ground floor and condos above. And then the images that are on the bottom are basically what it looks like today. It's not really moving forward at all. It's still covered in scaffolding. The third building is right next door, 732 Montgomery Street. It's called the Golden Era Building, and it's also historic. Same time period, mid-1850s. It's 2 levels plus a basement, and it currently houses Swissnex, which is a Swiss diplomatic building that focuses on innovation in architecture. Here you can see a nifty little view of the scope of work, how programmatically the spaces break up. So I developed the lobby and the lobby bar on the first floor that have an adjoining courtyard to connect to the restaurant, and a nighttime bar called the Opium Bar. The basement houses a spa that spans all 3 buildings, and then the second floor has guest rooms and meeting space in the Swissnex building. The third floor is only the Belli building, which is guest rooms, and then the rooftop bar spans the Belli building roof. So I'll take you really quick walk through the floor plan. So here we have the Belli building and the Swissnex building. This is the hoteling place. So you enter off of the alleyway and you walk down this corridor and you find yourself in this centrally located reception desk lobby. And the whole idea was to make it central so that everything you needed to get to could be easily navigated from one spot. To the right is a lobby bar that's open day and night. You can take the stairs or the elevator upstairs to the meeting facilities, or you can go to the left where there's this interior courtyard that leads to the restaurant, open day and night, and an opium bar that is open only at nighttime. On the second level, you'll find a variety of different guest rooms across the Belli building, different types. And then in the Swissnex building, you'll find the meeting facilities. The third level is just guest rooms. And then this is one of the focus spaces, the Penthouse suite. And then important to note is that this courtyard is right here, and it also has a light well. So it had the nice feature of offering daylight to these interior rooms, being able to make them into guest rooms. If we go down to the basement, that's where you'll find the spa. You exit the elevator here, and you'll be in a retail reception spot. And from here, you can access the gym, or you can go into the men's section or the women's section, which is a locker room and a spa pool experience. And then this hallway is kind of circuitous, and so each person can conveniently meet at the treatment rooms, which are unisex. There's a relaxation area, and then that's where your masseuse would meet you and then take you to a treatment room. And then if we go all the way up to the roof, you'll find yourself at the rooftop bar. Exit the elevator to find a reception desk here. This is a raised deck that offers seating in a small bar. And then a ramp comes down to this theater-like seating. And this ramp takes you to a main sunken bar, as well as this sky bridge that spans across the open courtyard. So on to the fun stuff, the design. So the whole concept for the project is the Barbary Coast. That's where this project is located. And basically it was the red light district of San Francisco, the original social district. So each space within the project tells a different aspect of the story, which I will read to you briefly right now. As the original social district of San Francisco, the Barbary Coast was a lawless area filled with vice and booze. Brothels and opium dens lined the streets, which were shrouded in illicit activity. The Barbary Coast was born out of the boom of the gold rush, and San Francisco evolved practically overnight with the discovery of this precious metal. A sea of men abandoned ships and descended upon the area, leaving in their path a bay cluttered of empty mass. During the early years, the only women in the area were prostitutes. They set up camp in Jackson Square, and the Barbary Coast was born. Many enjoyed great freedom and wealth until more respectable women and families joined their husbands in the city, and they became shamed outcasts. Although this was the definition of a red light district, ironically, it was also the only part of the city that had halls that could accommodate large numbers of people, so it was the only place where respectable social events could happen as well. So you constantly had this tension between the sacred and profane. Oddly enough, it was also the people who supplied the miners that really struck it rich rather than those searching for gold. Many people amassed enormous amounts of wealth very quickly, becoming this class of the nouveau riche. They looked to Europe for cues on how to be rich, which influenced their unique architecture and design. With the quest for gold also came a near destruction of natural resources, many of the consequences we still experience today. As a meeting point for the next big idea, it's really important that we understand the past and how our consequences can affect, or how our actions can affect our consequences in the future. So as I was saying, each space represents a piece of this story, which I told you, but a common thread that you'll see throughout is distortion of perception and man's kind of imposition on nature. So the first space is the lobby, and I was really inspired by imagery of fog, which is pretty quintessential San Francisco, and it creates this mysterious, eerie atmosphere that you would find in the Barbary Coast. And as I began looking at imagery, I realized that fog manifests itself in many different ways. At times it can be heavy and dark and palpable and even blinding, and other times it can be light and airy and wispy. And its behavior tends to kind of roll in undulating patterns. It kind of gathers at the edges, it obscures your sights, it changes your perceptions. And it also has this feature where you can always kind of see above it and below it, but never through it. So I even looked at the molecular structure of fog, which, as you'll see when I go through the slides, it really inspired some of the lighting choices within the space. So here you see the alleyway, your entrance, where you'll be greeted by valet. And the first thing you'll experience is walking through this dark hallway and hearing the trickling of water that contributes to that moody atmosphere. At the end of the hall, you'll reach this lobby desk that's a faux glowing alabaster. And these translucent curtains hint at this Victorian-inspired wallpaper behind it. The Tom Dixon lights create these really beautiful fractal patterns of light, and their placement, again, mimics that undulating pattern of fog. To the right of the reception desk, you'll find yourself at the lobby bar, which is open day or night, so you can enjoy a morning coffee or meet up with friends at night and socialize. And so two important things to mention about this space. First of all, throughout the space, I was thinking that business happens a lot of time outside of the boardroom. So how can we facilitate that throughout all these spaces? And then also looking at Victorian design and layouts of homes, they always have this formal parlor where you greet guests and you display all of your curiosities and your most prized possessions to show people how interesting and rich you are. And so I found this really awesome fabric on these chairs, and they're like Asian vases, and I thought how funny would it be if you actually put it on the furniture rather than displaying little knickknacks everywhere. And then the furniture choices all have a meaning. They're all kind of a modern nod to Victorian era furniture. So this is a slipper chair, which was really common to accommodate the bustles of women's dresses. And then the light fixtures that I chose, again, reminded me of those molecules of fog. It was just kind of by chance that I came across these. And I was like, yes, have to have those. And my other favorite piece is the nod to the Barbary Coast with the golden leg sculptures. So going back to how to facilitate business outside the boardroom, a combination of looking at that and Victorian layouts is creating these nooks of seating throughout all of the spaces where people can kind of come together and chat and socialize. So to the left of the reception desk, you'll find yourself in the interior courtyard. And this is basically a modern version of a parterre, which was an English manicured garden that was created for rich people to look at from their windows. And the fun thing about parterres is that you can't really see the pattern unless you're above it. So this is just kind of an homage to that era. So if we go upstairs to the guest rooms, to the penthouse suite on the 3rd floor, I was inspired by the Big Four, which were the mansions on Nob Hill, and those people amassed enormous wealth during the gold rush era right here in the Bay Area, and they created this new class of nouveau riche. And so those people looked to Europe for cues on how to behave and what to wear and how to decorate. And so what you ended up with is this mishmash menagerie of different styles all kind of thrown together. So again, I'm looking at Victorian layouts, and so that informed how I laid out the space and created focal points, one being the entrance on the left, which is kind of like this anti-room or receiving area that would have been common in homes. And then right after that is the main living area. And I thought this would be a great space, you know, one for relaxing, but also for throwing VIP events. As it's the penthouse, they're probably going to be entertaining some really high-profile clients. This is a master bedroom, and it's a nod, you know, to traditional silhouettes of the 4-poster bed and the fainting sofa in a modern way. And then one thing that I always knew I wanted to do was something with the ceiling. Victorians thought that a plain white ceiling assaulted your eyes. It was like very, very taboo not to have any decoration on your ceiling. So I thought I would just kind of update it in a fun way, and overall creating a homey atmosphere where it feels like home away from home. So I looked a lot at penthouse layouts in condos when I was designing the layout for the guest room and the bathrooms and the closets, and thinking about how people who stayed here, what they would be using the space for. And that level of client would probably be going to a lot of high society events. So they'd have hairstylists and makeup artists coming and helping them get ready. So I made sure I had a large counter with a seating space, natural daylight, and then switchable glass for privacy on the windows. And then opposite the sinks is this bathtub with this faux agate wall, kind of hinting at the treasures within the earth. And the exposed pipe is a nod to the common practice in the Victorian era where people exposed their pipes so that they could show how rich they were, that they could afford indoor plumbing, which I thought was kind of a fun fact. So if we go down to the basement, you'll find yourself in the spa. And two reasons behind this, one being that in the basement, it's going to be the quietest area and giving this serene atmosphere. But also, given that the concept was gold mines, I love this idea of actually going down into the earth to just further the concept even more. I was inspired by different mining techniques and the shapes of quarries, and that really informed the layout of the pools and the rest of the space. So here you'll find yourself in the reception area once you exit the elevator, and you have this massive split stone with gold on the interior, and the wall feature behind it originally started as looking at these mining carts that you would see, and it turned into these rough cubbies, and then it turned into these more rectilinear, smoother cubby holes featuring retail products as a juxtaposition to the rough stone, and this constant push and pull of nature and man structure. So behind this glass wall, you'll find the gym, and then this door behind the reception desk, and there's one opposite, lead to the men's and women's locker rooms. So now you arrive in the spa pools, and I really wanted to create a journey for the user that it would be almost like a hot spring experience going from one thing to the next. So you start off in this warm pool, and then you follow it by a dip in this hot pool, followed by a cold shower, and back into a second warm pool. And it's a circuitous route, so it can be repeated as many times as you want. And the shape of the pools and the sizes reflect how much time I imagine people would be spending there. So for instance, in a hot pool, people kind of dunk in and dunk out rather quickly, so it's smaller. And cold pools, no one ever wants to be in a spa. So I thought that a shower would be more effective with the use of space. And then you can go back into these larger warm pools, which you can see here. And another challenge was how, most people are going to be naked, so how do you create like this sense of privacy and make people feel comfortable in a space that's open? So in these warmer pools where people would be spending more time, I created kind of these carved out nooks where you can still get a little bit of sense of privacy. And then when you make it out of the last warm pool, you'll find yourself in this relaxation area with these hanging basket seats, which reminded me of how you kind of hook yourself in and shimmy yourself down into a mine. And again, creating this private space within a public space. And then on the opposite end of the spa, you'll find yourself in the treatment zones. And this is a really nice relaxation area that can set the tone for your treatments, where you'll be whisked away into a treatment room. And when I came up with the space layout, I was very conscious of how I would have people cross paths and where they needed to be separated and where they needed to come together, and then also quiet versus active zones. So if we move on to the meeting facilities, which is on the second floor of the Swiss Next building, I was inspired by this idea of a stagecoach, which carried all the riches during the time of the gold rush, and more of a deconstruction of a stagecoach, so you'll see kind of a mixing of past and present in the space. So this is the conference room, and the layout of the windows reminded me a lot of actually being in this stagecoach and kind of looking out. And so I thought it would be really cool if the room abstractly looked like the belly of a wagon. So we have like this dark, smooth wood that bends up and over the ceiling. And then the lights look kind of like spindles of a wheel. So here you can see some doodles of playing with the shapes that were common in a wagon and how they kind of got deconstructed and reappear subtly in shapes of the furniture and in the wall feature. So this on the left is a sitting area where you can check your email, read the newspaper, have a coffee at the bar, but you can also move the furniture and have large-scale events. And because of the location of the bar, it's centrally located. It's really ideal to accommodate a wide variety of events. And then this is the opposite end of this space, opposite the conference room. And it's the event space. And that's where I imagine people giving their presentations or showing film screenings. And what's cool about this and was challenging was that it's a really narrow building. So how do I make it multifunctional? And I was inspired by the Contemporary Jewish Museum seating, where it's stadium seats that actually fold away. And so you wouldn't know they're there unless they're down, and all the projectors tuck away. So it's really clean. And it can be, the glass walls can open for large-scale events that would need more floor space, so it's making it a lot more flexible. So the restaurant is on the ground floor, opposite the lobby. And this is open day and night, and the concept came to me when I saw this quote that said, "A graveyard of ships left a forest of mass crowding the San Francisco Bay as sailors rushed off to the gold mines in search of riches." And I was really struck by this imagery of a forest of mass. So I started thinking a lot about pieces of a forest, elements of the forest. So the dappling of light, the veining of leaves, these soaring trees, the colors, but then also the flip side of man kind of imposing himself and creating this structure within nature. So here you'll see this circular, really dramatic entrance. To the left, you see this very rectilinear shape that looks like an arbor of trees. And you can be tucked away in booths on the right or tucked away to the left on two top tables that look out over the courtyard. And then at the end of this hallway, you'll find yourself at the wine bar, at a private dining space, and the kitchen and restrooms. And then there we go. To the right of the entrance is the main bar, and the materials, such as the bar material, looks to me like the veining of leaves and these branching lights of trees. And then this is actually one of my favorite spaces. So in my hospitality class, we talked a lot about dead zones in hotels and how you need to avoid them because you're losing profit wherever you're not activating the space. And this was a huge dead zone because it was basically how you got to the Opium bar which is only open at night, and so it's basically like an emergency exit. And so I was done with this space for the spring show, and Clodagh actually had the idea when she looked at it and said, you know, why don't you find a way to like incorporate it into the bar or the restaurant? And so this idea of like a two-sided bar was born, and now this is like my favorite little area, and I love the idea that people can be walking by on the street and can kind of like peek in and see what's going on. So opposite the main bar, which you just saw, on the left is the main dining room, and kind of this metaphorical clearing in the space. And the Tom Dixon lights reappear as these votives on the tables, creating that kind of dappling of light. And then I used perforated leather for the backs of the chairs. So to me, it looked kind of like leaves in the trees. And then on the right side, the image shows the wine bar that was at the end of the arbor seating. Again, another clearing, and using, you know, a natural organic material, wood, but in a very structured way. So the second to last space is my Opium bar, which is open at night. And it was based off of this idea of an opium den that was really common in the red light district, and this mixing of sacred and profane, and how you always had this illicit activity, but then also respectable activities going on at the same time. So here you see the entrance to the bar. You have this life-size horse lamp and the mirrored ceiling kind of playing with your perceptions on what's real and what's not, and just feeding into that taboo fantasy of this whole area. So the main bar is really fun. It plays off of this idea of a peep show, and how like at certain points even like showing your wrist, which is like such an innocent thing, was considered taboo. And so the bartenders are standing higher than the patrons, so all you see are their hands working, making your cocktails, and then you can open these grates that, you know, were inspired by like fishnet stocking patterns and kind of reach through and get your drink. This was a challenging space because the overall space is really small, and so I was challenged to think about how I could create intimate conversation in this space that kind of needed to be open. So I did that by creating smaller nooks of seating and using these caged chairs where you can still kind of feel enveloped. And then my personal favorite are these nooks, these VIP booths that are kind of a mixture of an opium bed that you kind of crawl into and lay on, but then also a confessional booth, so the sacred and profane again mixing. And the result are these VIP booths with really plush seating that you can kind of hide away in. So the last space is up on the rooftop. This is my rooftop bar, and it's based off of a spyglass, which is an instrument used to see in sailing, and plays off of this idea of watching. So the biggest challenge of this space was, how do I design something when the concept is the view? I mean, I really struggled with this a lot. And it's this really unusual vantage point where you're on top of this 3-story building looking at the middle of these really cool high-rises, like right front and center. You have the Transamerica building right there, and then you have this like strangest thing, this like redwood forest right next to it. It's so weird. And so what ended up evolving was, okay, the view is going to be the concept, and I'm going to do that by creating this sunken seating so that at no point do you obstruct the view of other people around you, and it almost becomes like this theater of watching what's out there. And then that kind of like morphed into the people down there are looking down at the people in the bottom of the courtyard, but they're also looking out, and then the people that are in those buildings are looking down on this building. And so I wanted to connect the two spaces, and I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I kind of played with people's perceptions and I made it look like one giant parterre garden on the roof? So that informed the layout of the furniture, that it's rarely symmetrical, and then AstroTurf is actually the upholstery, so that when you're up in those other buildings from far away, you're kind of like, is that a garden? Like, what is that? I don't know. And then the other challenge of this space was, how do I connect this gaping hole in my roof to what's below it and make it seem cohesive? And so in the landscape class, it started out as this idea of like carrying fog, which was the theme of the lobby, concept of the lobby, like up and out and over onto like some sort of roof structure. And that kind of got tossed by the wayside, and then it morphed into this sky bridge that goes across, really interacting the two spaces. And then, of course, it's always like the simplest thing after like trying a million different things that I was like, yes, I need to take this shape of these manicured garden orbs, and they need to become light fixtures that kind of carry your eye up to the sky bridge, and then they reappear throughout the roof. And then once you cross the sky bridge, you'll find yourself at the main bar, and all the walls that are up here are mirrored, so they reflect back the skyline so that everyone has a great view no matter where they're seated. And then it's also kind of blurring the line between nature and man's creation, and it's just kind of that parting food for thought of like, you know, your actions have consequences. The end.
That was a wonderful presentation and very a lot of information covered in a short amount of time. So congratulations on being able to communicate that much as far as how far you've delved into your concept in a very diverse ways, because we see it with your material selections, with your space planning, with your circulation, and even with your programming, like the types of spaces you've created, all really tie back into your concept. So I think that was really successful. One of the parts I really enjoyed was how you deconstructed the concept, and then it reappeared when it came together in a new way into actual furniture pieces. And so I thought that, and then you sketched it to explain it. Not, you weren't just talking about it, but we have sketches that show the evolution of deconstructing and recreating. So that was really nice. Renderings were great, very informative. Really doesn't leave much for us to imagine, because you've created it and developed it really well. I have a question about your target users.
Yes.
Okay, so you talked about it in the beginning. They're clearly identified. Do you envision, if this place was going to be built, do you envision that the same people socializing, the Silicon Valley kind of entrepreneurs, are also going to be your hotel guests, that there's a lot of crossover?
It could be, for sure. I think the 20 to 30 somethings, you have a mix of people who would actually see the value in it and be able to afford to be a full-fledged member. But then you also have the other people who maybe can't afford to pay the membership all the time, but could stay there on the weekend and be able to access it via that way.
Because programmatically, there's a lot of common uses of your space between the hotel and the social club aspect. So I think that that's something that's interesting, that you could share the target user, or they could strive to be, members. And then do you have anything that would be open to kind of the struggling entrepreneurs that haven't made it yet, that haven't right? Because there's a good part of them in the Bay Area.
Right, and well, that's why you can definitely be a guest of someone, which is a pretty common practice in many social clubs. You can be invited as a guest, you can experience it that way. Or, as I was saying, you could be a hotel guest for a night, which, will be expensive, but won't, cost you the world, and that'll give you access to the club when you need it.
Okay. Feel excited?
Yeah, as your large image suggests, I try to weave it together, because what you bring kind of density together, and when you look at the space planning, it's sort of, so you take these 4 buildings and weave them together in a very, it's a very realistic way you're doing it, meaning that in terms of space use, and it's working within a certain grid structure, so to speak.
Right.
But it works very well with the difficulties that this density creates. I mean, and even with fire codes and how to get in and out, and I think you managed that very well. But when I try to weave it, as from the images you show, so from your files, what strikes me is almost like Piranesi. You're carving things out of the darkness almost. Which is funny to me, and I think there is, when you're in San Francisco and the wind starts blowing in the high summer, And I used to work on Russian Hill for 5-6 years, and all of a sudden it starts to smell like firewood, and it becomes this weird thing in San Francisco, and so it creates this wish for coziness in a way, and that brings along all of a sudden this darkness what you're dealing with makes sense to me. Because I would always advocate for the light, but in San Francisco, despite there is so much light and brightness that photographers love it, but then there's the other side of it, which you're working with, and I think that's very successful. This kind of, again, take it from the other end.
And I thought it really tied in with, this whole idea of the Barbary Coast. I always think of it as night, as this kind of like seedy, scary almost area that you kind of walk through and you never know what's around the corner. So I don't know, the darkness just kind of spoke to me as the direction to go in.
Yeah, and there's, of course, in Baroque architecture, there's in drafting, there's chiaroscuro. So, and it's always this contrast and how you model it.
Right.
And almost like, that's why many of your scenes are almost movie sets in a way, because they're really carved out, and the views of the city. I mean, I wouldn't say the Blade Runner, but if you see the conceptual drawings, of course, it's a total different scene, but you know what it was really carved out of darkness. It was thought out of there's never daylight there. And of course, you put it to the positive, whereas, so I don't want to, you know what I mean. So anyhow, I have a little question.
Okay.
After my long... well, if I just want to go to the hotel.
Yes.
So how do I get there? Because you come out, just walk me through.
So this is the alleyway, and right here would be the ballet, and you have the entrance right here, which goes to the central lobby.
Oh, okay.
So
I took it from the other side.
everyone enters on the same area.
And which stair do I take up?
I'm sorry?
Which stair do I take up?
So the main elevator, if you want to go to the guest rooms, is right here. And then if you want to go to the meeting facility, the elevator is right here.
And if I want to take the stair?
The stair is adjacent to the elevator.
Okay, and when I come up there, now I come up on the second floor, go to my room.
Yes. So these are all guest rooms, and this is a housekeeping area. So it's just kind of a circuitous path here.
Yeah. You have is the courtyard existing already there?
Yes, it is. It was original to the building.
Yeah. Because that sort of saves you there.
Oh,
because
it totally
otherwise
does.
You get this terrible corridor.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have been able to have rooms on this side because you wouldn't have daylight and
Thank you. No,
fire
that's
codes. So
good.
yeah, it was very lucky that it worked out that way.
Classy. This is. I really love your connection between the gold rush in San Francisco, because it's such an important part of San Francisco. To how you carried through the entire concept the whole way with this project, and the gold rush that we're going through right now with entrepreneurs. And I've been to some of these startups, where it's just it's like a big space, and people have these crazy ideas for apps. 90% of them don't work that well, or they're just starting to. So I mean, I think we need a place for exclusive, something exclusive like this. This is a perfect project for San Francisco, I think.
I think so.
It's yeah, and the way that you connected, just from the furniture, the design, going back to the gold era, the Victorians, the Victorian reform, everything is pretty strong, and I can tell this. I don't know, how long have you been working on this?
2 years.
Okay. Yeah. This is something. My question is, what's like the price range? I'm just curious. Like, do you have any idea for price range if I wanted to stay in this hotel for a night, and maybe not the penthouse level? I'm sure that's going to be.
Well, based on other luxury hotels that are in San Francisco and what this club would offer, I would think that the intro room would be around like $450 a night.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then in terms of membership, I looked at a lot of different clubs. For example, like the Olympic Club, to join as a young member is $6,000, and then it goes up based on your age.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of prices out that group that we were talking about. And so they're actually building basically by project in Jackson Square. It's targeted towards art and media, again, unfortunately not techies, but their intro price was a $2,500 membership fee, which I thought was pretty fair, where you don't just get like everyone and get overrun. It's high enough to make sure that the people who are joining are serious, but it's not exclusionary where you don't get that mix of people that you really want.
That's interesting. I wonder if you see more of things like you're proposing in the peninsula as opposed to San Francisco. I agree. I think San Francisco could really use a space like this. But it's, it's interesting that they're doing more of the arts and media as opposed to the techie.
You have Swissnex there. You went there, hopefully. Yeah, did you?
I'm sorry?
Did you go to one of the Swissnex events?
I didn't go to their event, but I took a tour.
It works so well. I mean, it's an interesting format, and it works so well, and you can take it over there.
Yeah. There's this woman who started this. It's kind of like the next evolution of like a co-working space, basically. That's in Hayes Valley called Makeshift Society, and they target like the blogging world and people who are more design oriented as a place to come together and exchange ideas. It's like the same concept, a different target, and so I just feel like it's a matter of time before that happens.
Yeah, no, I could buy into that. Your spa, I just want to ask one more question, is it's a destination in itself, the spa that you've created, and really interesting interior there. What did the research of your site and the context of San Francisco and then these users for the hotel and the social club, how did that help you determine that you wanted a spa in your building?
Well, I think that when you're offering luxury amenities, like comparing it to the Olympic Club that has this like amazing pool and these gym facilities, and then looking at Bay Club, like all the amenities that they offer, that it really needed to have some sort of like luxury pampering to appeal, I mean, both to men and women, but it would be nice to have more women in that space as well to kind of appeal to both sexes. And then the spas, I had a really hard time trying out spas in San Francisco. They're all really outdated and nothing's really that special about them, or they have some really big faux pas about noise and how the spaces interact. Nothing feels like it's an experience that you're going to. And the only time I've ever had that like great experience where scent and light and noise and design all come together are at resorts like in Mexico or so. Like we're far away, like you don't really have that experience in the city. So I thought it would be nice to offer that.
Yeah, I think it's
definitely
a nice
selling point.
And it's an added destination to this project, and especially when you have a boutique hotel, you're looking for those unique aspects of it. So I think it works in that way.
You need to add a cold dip though too. Cold dip pool?
Okay, so there was a reason why I didn't though. So I went to the Kabuki, I've been there a few times, and it's kind of like this hot spring idea. But the problem is that, so they have like a big warm pool and a cold pool. No one is ever in the cold pool because it's ice cold.
It's because they didn't know how to use it.
Yeah, that's the
right.
problem here.
And so that was kind of why I thought having these like automatic like rain showers that were cold that you could kind of step under.
That's cool, yeah.
Before you go back into the warm pool saved space, and then it also gave that added benefit.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the spa. I think it's actually, very, this fits the program. I mean, if you go to Asia, every hotel has a spa, just about, in China at least, and many in Japan too. So I think that could be a really, that's something we need here more, I think.
And it could define why people choose this destination as opposed to other hotels.
Right.
So we're going to take a minute and meet as a committee, and we will be right back with you.
Oh God, that was freaking awesome.
Oh yeah.
It's online.
No, I asked. There's a place in the city called. I should ask her. I asked her. No one found it. Is it Imprint or something? Small.
Like playing around with graphics. It's really cool. It looks good. Just looks good. With super graphics.
Yeah.
It's good.
But you guys think this is like the best project you've ever seen? I mean, it's amazing.
One of them.
The best one I've seen in the past few days.
Yeah.
Even compared to the Asian ones that were really good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much thought behind
There
what
is
she
thought.
did. I mean,
Yeah.
everything in terms of every move she made almost in here, and the things that she chose to do, you know, and relating it back to what actually happened in, you know, the gold rush of San Francisco. That was, and putting it in a modern context like this, that was phenomenal.
I'll tell you the only reason why I'm not saying
Okay, tell me
the
what.
only reason is I see this happening in Peninsula. I don't really see it happening in San Francisco. You know, the Facebooks,
The what? These guys are kind of trivial in their understanding.
No, this is for a space for people who have made it, right?
Right, right, right.
In
The old
tech,
boys
in
club.
tech.
She's trying to connect with the you know, with the people that have made it.
I got it. No, I buy into that. But those people are in the peninsula. They're not the people that are kind of living in San Francisco are the people like us who maybe got a job at Google and they're still wanting to do that commute or are struggling. They're entrepreneurs and they want to live in the city. It's this younger population that has not made it. The people that are going to go here are the Los Altos, Atherton, Palo Alto.
What's wrong with that?
In most cases, they are not that young anymore.
No, I have a couple of friends. I have a couple of friends that have, one of them lives in Pacifica, and one of them lives in Silicon Valley. And these guys have money that they don't care. They'll spend $2,000, $3,000 in a night, no problem. You know, the Penthouse level and a party, and invite a bunch of Google, you know, their friends that work in Google. This is a place that you make connections. It's a place for connections, and people that, you know, like they will be invited there, and you know, maybe there was some public space where that she could have had that
Parking.
Well, she did. Yeah, San Francisco, maybe. But I mean, I think what I like is the risk factor.
Yeah.
You know, like
it is. I think maybe we can't justify that it's perfectly relevant right now, but it will be. I think maybe. Anyways, that's just my
it is relevant right now. I think it is relevant right now. Come on, there's so many. Even a guy in tech that worked for Google, how much do you think he makes a year?
Depends which guy.
I know,
is he one of
like
the first 50 employees?
Mid-level, 150 grand a year easily.
Yeah.
I mean,
what is that going to get you? Well, 150 grand. Really
it gets you a good lifestyle,
not
though.
6,000.
Not 6,000. Maybe not the penthouse level.
No.
There's a bit of a misconception. There's a bit of a misconception.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
It's
I
only
work for
one
startup. I mean, come on.
Right.
I'm not
95% really
I know,
tech.
but startups are dying for connections too. Those guys.
Of course.
So then
And so,
you could
you know,
bring
like
this, then you could bring this component. that
maybe
you're
she
reaching
needs to
out.
have more like if there was a place where she could actually have a you know, maybe a very small VP meeting. I mean, what do you call them? Those not incubators, not just incubators, but where the
think
VP,
tanks, like,
but in a small setting, you know, like where you just invite certain people and stuff. Yeah, I know it's a little dreamy, but you know, it's a little VIP, but at the same time, I think it's perfect.
So we'll just pass
Yes,
her and
absolutely.
give her some positive
Freaking April.
Congratulations, you have passed your final. Unanimously. Yeah, it's good. Unanimously, we really enjoyed the amount of thought that was put into all the different components of this project, and then the way you've developed those ideas into like clear graphic representations of what you want to do with the space. You know the building in and out, you know the site in and out, and it's a very relevant topic. In fact, the discussion we were getting into was how relevant it is. And so, you know, we really like to see students that have one foot in reality, and we certainly see that you're tuning into a part of our culture and society that is just, it's a hot topic right now. So it's nice to see where you chose to focus your energy on. It was a very, very successful project and presentation.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Beautiful design.
Thank you.